that was the opening of this week's culture class. It was by the Setzer Orchestra. You probably heard it in many movie soundtracks. But the reason why I brought that up, because you know that I always like to initiate with the theme song, is because it's about the glory and the excitement and the love of being an American. And I think a lot of us don't feel that way right now. And also other people, like people who are immigrating to the United States wanting to be an American right now. So it's just like, I don't know, the theme to get right in, because the first slide that I'm actually going to show is that the public's mood right now in terms of this Pew Research poll is that just 17% say that they are proud when thinking about the state of the United States. So 17%, that's pretty crazy right now when everybody wanted to be an American before. I just wanted to help you see that viscerally. So I'm going to move forward, and I just want to reintroduce myself again. My name is Brad Grossman. This is basically the 5th culture class for the summer semester, but I've been doing this, I'm calling it a culture mass class. I started doing it basically the first week of COVID, which was March 18th. Well, people, as you know, decided, you know, we had the shelter in place basically on March 12th or March 13th, which was my 45th birthday. But I decided to have a free culture class on the 18th, and every Wednesday since then, we've been having a culture class. And I am the host, and my name is Brad Grossman, and I have a company called ZEITGUIDE, which means Guide to the Zeitgeist. And for those of you who haven't been on or have heard me say this a million times, Zeitgeist is a German word that means spirit of the times. And culture class is my newest product, and I've been doing it for companies, customizing it for them for the issues that they need to know or want to know, companies across all different industries. And when I'm dissecting the world of ideas and trying to keep track of the evolving narrative of culture, I'm always looking at these 4 big buckets of change, or these 4 big ZEITGUIDE pillars of change, which are global trends, tech trends, consumer trends, and workplace trends. And I always ask my students or my audience to always think about these 4 questions about what are you learning, why is it relevant to you, what can you or what should you do about these learnings, and how could you integrate these trends into your own business practices, strategies, company and sales strategy, decision-making, and life. So moving forward, I just always want to start with, or I always start with what I have been feeling is the heartbeat of the week. And as you know, I started in week 1, and many of you who have been in here, and again, I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself, but every week we have new people. I always have a theme of the week, and week 1 was March 18th, the first time I did it. Last week we took off. But I basically called it July 4th, a country divided. I know a lot of people who have been, who experienced their July 4th weekend. There were some that were on Fire Island partying. I don't know if you saw that, or young people all over the beach, or other people in half the states where the virus is rising, not social distancing, not wearing masks. And then obviously we have other conversations, whether should we destroy all Confederacy image, whether they're statues or everywhere else, as well as the conversations about racial injustice. So many other things that have been dividing America, but I'm basically saying that this week, in week 17, defines the zeitgeist right now as we're in a crescendo of global discord. So last week I felt about that it was more national discord, but after reading so many things, I basically illuminate, or I read and learned about in literally the last 3 days about all the global conflicts. And that's where I'm going to start. It's obviously going to be very depressing, but again, this is just to help you have a snapshot of what's happening in terms of a global discord. I would say that coronavirus was, as I always say, a magnifier of all the shit that plagued our society before, and an accelerator, hopefully, for the change that we really want to have. And then in the beginning of June, after George Floyd's death, we brought the conversation, which is a necessary conversation, about dismantling racial injustice in our country and in the rest of the world. And then this week, I feel like there was another thing just thrown into the conversation, what's happening, which is China, which I'm going to be discussing in a bit. And then after I go through my zeitguiding, which I just want to say that I'm going to run through a lot of things. And, you know, usually when I do this for my premium zeitguide classes, culture classes, or for my companies, it's a full hour and I go much more comprehensively, but I'm just have time to zip through because we have two pieces of Zeitguides culture class towards the end, which everybody loves, which is the show and tell section, where I bring in somebody who has a really, or two people in the sense, Lindsay and Nkrumah Farrar, who are the founders of Crown Magazine, which is a magazine for Black women, which is lifestyle, beauty, and fashion, but I'm going to have Nkrumah and Lindsay talk about that. That's my show and tell section. And then Felix Salmon, who's the chief financial correspondent of Axios. And those of you who have been on Zeitguide Culture class for a while, you know that Axios is one of my favorite sources because they define the way that they report as smart brevity. And they have these amazing newsletters in all different categories. Felix is being one of them. But what I am, I also am a proponent of smart brevity, but obviously I'm doing it live. So let's get started. I am just going to go through 20 examples very quickly of what's happening in terms of the zeitgeist of the crescendo of global discord. So I already talked about Trump versus some parts of the country, Trump's supporters versus the non-supporters, and Trump and the rest of the world. And on 4th of July, we talked a lot about, you know, people wearing masks or people not wearing masks. And I just wanted to illuminate actually Felix from Axios. I just wanted to, you know, have this shout out because they did a poll with Ipsos that basically said that 50% of Americans report wearing a mask at all times. That's just 50%. So look at that stat. And I just wanted to add something because I know Felix is also German. Felix, if you're there, this is an honor of you. If you missed this, Berlin's transport company basically is doing an ad campaign to make people wear masks by saying that people shouldn't start not wearing deodorant because then people will start wearing masks. Let's keep going with the global.
You've zoomed. You've posted.
Which was Trump versus the World Health Organization. He's pulling out funding, he just said. We have just learned today that universities are suing the Trump administration's plan to require in-person classes for foreign students. So basically, they are filing a lawsuit that would basically against saying that foreign students will not have their visas if the universities, mainly MIT and Harvard, who were part of the lawsuit, do all their learning online. So there's a division. We are all knowing that a vaccine needs to come for us to really get through this. We can eliminate the contagion degree by social distancing and wearing masks, but we also saw how the mayor Bonhams from Atlanta actually just got it when she has been really careful as well. So we really need to fight for this vaccine. But on the flip side, it's going to be more divisions between those who believe in vaccines and those who are anti-vaccine. That conversation is going to start bubbling up. And in fact, Catholic leaders are already saying that they're concerned that the COVID-19 vaccine are using cells derived from human fetuses that, you know, would help us all, you know, be cured by the COVID. Keep going with the global divisions. There was a report in the New York Times recently that says that Latino and African American residents are 3 times as likely to become infected as their white neighbors. And actually, Black and Latino people have nearly been twice as likely to die from the virus as white people. So there you can see racial inequality. Here's a good thing about global division. Because of the George Floyd protests happening here, it has spread all over to the rest of the world, including Africa. And Africans from Kenya, from Uganda, from Zimbabwe, from Nigeria, are all basically, and others are all protesting against police brutality in their countries as well. So again, it's extending out to the global. We're going against the United Nations, who are basically the United States killings of General Soleimani of Iran. They're saying that it's unlawful. So there's another thing. Yesterday, basically, our FBI director, Christopher Wray, basically said that China is a superpower. They think of themselves as being the only superpower in the particular world. Here we go. In terms of here. Instead, China is engaged in a whole of state effort to become the world's only superpower by any means. And if you missed it, Reuters basically and others reported, I saw this tweet, that Pompeo really is concerned about TikTok, which many of us know is the new hot social media app that everybody's on. It's owned by a Chinese company called ByteDance. They're trying to, they're doing a great job in terms of extending their reach to other people all over the world besides China. And because ByteDance is owned by China, Pompeo is basically saying that they want everybody in the United States to stop using it. So they're showing their concerns over that. So again, now there's a division between us and China. Instagram just reported that for everybody who's in any type of company that relies on social media, especially Instagram, Instagram is creating a new app called Reel. Because India, because of their fight against the Chinese or the skirmishes that happen on the border, basically has banned TikTok. And this is the reason why Instagram is creating this new platform that's very TikTok-y, which I'm sure we're going to hear a lot about. They're expanding it to India. So then we have China and India. Basically, and here again, Felix, Axios, this is the best distillation of what's happening in China and Hong Kong right now, where there are laws, basically a security law, that's basically, I'll say it right from Axios because they so clearly define it, it's the clearest encroachment to date on the autonomy that has allowed Hong Kong to flourish as a global financial hub with political and legal protections unimaginable on the mainland. So, and they're also basically saying that if anybody speaks out against Hong Kong, against China, against China's relationship and this law against Hong Kong, they will, if you ever come to China or Hong Kong, they will investigate you. And that's a story in development as well. But Axios and many others basically also talked about how this is also impacting the tech companies because Hong Kong and the tech companies are in Hong Kong, whether it's Google, whether it's Apple, TikTok, et cetera. Chinese are basically asking them to give all their data to the Chinese government. And most of the tech companies, the American-based companies, are holding back. Now, TikTok is an interesting case study because they actually said that they're going to be leaving Hong Kong, which is interesting. They want to be defined as other, as a global social media platform. And I think they've had over 300 million downloads since the beginning of COVID. But, TikTok, this is an interesting thing. They actually went further than all the other tech companies that basically have held back giving the data that the Chinese government is requesting. So here we have tech companies against China. The one company that hasn't really assessed this new Hong Kong law is Apple. Now, like I said, Google, Twitter, and Facebook said they're going to pause processing user data requests, but Apple has not said that they would do that yet. So again, we know how much Apple does business with China. In fact, they've been, producing chips and all hardware in China. So it makes sense. They were also very hesitant to speak about the Hong Kong protests during that time pre-COVID when protests were happening all over the world. Another division, we have been seeing a lot of advertisers boycott Facebook because of their refusal to flag the Trump quote looting and shooting like Twitter did, and also their dissatisfaction with Facebook trying to stop the spread of hate speech and misinformation. But that's also in conflict with a lot of direct-to-consumer brands who feel compelled that they should get off because of all the big brands. But you know what? This is the only way that they can advertise. They can't afford to be on television and do other things like the big brand. So here we have a division between the philosophy between some of these big brands and some of these smaller direct-to-consumer brands. And then this was just been in the last couple of days, but I wanted to show that the organization Stop for Hate basically recommended next steps for Facebook to actually move forward in terms of preventing this hate language from disseminating all over. And they gave 10 notions of accountability. The one that I thought was most interesting that I don't think most people are talking about is that they want there to be a live Facebook employee and that basically can be like a customer service representative. I know everybody in brands here are really, interested in how to make customer experience so, better than any other brand. And, this is one thing. It's about having a live employee that anybody who's experiences hate speech or anything like that, or sees hate speech, they would be able to talk to somebody and actually be able to tell them what they've seen. In the tech media, there's also a big division. Again, I'm looking at all four of the buckets. There has been a lot of controversy between tech, and I'm actually interested to see what Felix has to say about this, and tech media. So a reporter, Zoe Schiffer from The Verge, reported on the fact that Away, the direct-to-consumer suitcase brand, had a toxic work environment. And she wrote this article, which she's a reporter and she found that out. She should tell the world. I mean, that's what journalism is all about. It's the fourth estate. But there was basically a hate or disagreements all over social media from not only the CEO who was criticized, who said that the reporter was slandering, but also that the venture capitalist who put money into the company is basically saying how disgraceful the journalist was. Another division, I talked about facial recognition technology and how IBM and some other Microsoft said they were going to stop facial recognition technology because of their fear of privacy issues. And Apple basically said that they're not going to do that yet, and they're actually creating the facial scanning technique or capability in their new home kits. So you see Apple versus some of the other big tech companies. And I'm just going to go through the remaining, and then we're going to go with our Zeit guests. I'm really excited. We've been hearing about Congress's desire to regulate the big tech companies. So you have big tech versus Congress. And this actually is going to happen in July 17th, where they're going to have to go to Washington and, they're going to hear them to see if they are being too monopolistic. even Hamilton, there showed some division. There were people who were saying that Lin-Manuel, the creator of Hamilton, and by the way, it was a huge success on Disney Plus. I think they increased by, yeah, like their curve went like this when even Netflix went like this, which is insane. But people were criticizing Lin-Manuel, who basically reconstitutes the Hamilton and the founding father story by casting Black and brown actors. Many of us know that. I'm sure many of you have decided to download Hamilton, but Lin-Manuel was basically criticized for not really talking too much about the slavery issue with the founding fathers. And basically he retorted that he said that, you know what, I did the best I can. So even like Lin-Manuel is getting pushback. So look at all these crazy divisions. It's not just one polarization. And I really do think the next conversation is going to be about the PPP. Now, Cindy Gallup, who was on a couple weeks ago, who taught us all about how to end racism in the corporate world, the PPP loans were just announced today. The SBA basically published every single company that got a PPP loan. And most of those on there were big brands and companies and startups that were owned by, or companies owned by men and white people. And, Cindy Gallup basically talked back and basically said, Black and color female founders, you will be burning red hot with rage when you see the amount of companies and the juxtaposition and the percentage of who got it, who didn't. I feel that there's next going to be a boycott against all these big brands who basically took these big loans, and the other people or the smaller companies, small businesses haven't been able to get it. So I am seeing those divisions everywhere. And this was oh, by the way, 74% increase in subscriptions on Disney Plus. That was the number. I had a brain fart. So that being said, I made a list of everything I just covered. So feel free to snapshot it to make you feel really excited about where the world is going. I'm going to scroll through this so people could take snapshots. But these, and there's so many others. I mean, even before COVID, we had like around 30 countries all over the world protesting. So the world was on fire pre-COVID. I kept saying that, but look where it is today. And it's division across all those sectors: global, in our country, in technology, geopolitically, consumer-wise, and the conversations about work. So